Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in to Lord Petty, the show. Appreciate you being here. Hope all is well. Hope you had a good week. Hope you're having a good week. Because we're doing good vibes only around this bitch. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I just swore in the first bit, but who cares? Doesn't matter. Yeah, bro. It's been a interesting week. I had way too much coffee this morning, and I'm kind of tweaking right now. I kind of feel like a crackhead. I'm not gonna lie. Like I filmed a video earlier, and I watched the video back, and the frame was like shaking. And whereas I got like coffee jitters. I don't know why, because I had a pretty big breakfast. Maybe it's because I went to the gym. I went to the gym and I had pre-workout. I think I'm having caffeine related anxiety or something like that, where I feel like, I don't know. I don't really understand anxiety, to be honest, because I definitely, I think everybody has it in a way, you know? I just think it's a way of like managing it. And sometimes I'm not very good at managing it. So this is like a judgmental thing for me. Just be like, oh, just breathe. Just breathe, sissy. No, like I sometimes I get these. And they come at the weirdest times too. Like shit, where all of a sudden, I think it's like when I get the feeling where I can't leave. If I get the feeling like I'm stuck somewhere, it's not like I'm claustrophobic. It's not so much like being in a tight space. It's just in general, like if I'm stuck in a grocery line, or it always has something to do with other people. Like I never just get it when I'm like by myself. It always has something to do with like being surrounded by people I don't want to be around and I can't get away. It's a weird thing, but uh, yeah, right now I just feel like super. Actually, when I think what it is, because we had this stupid hurricane come through in the last couple days, and I ended up getting day drunk. It was it's pretty funny. I stomped my white ass. I walked through, like we didn't get hit by the brunt of the hurricane, but we straight up like sideways rain, and I knew the power was going to go out. The internet was already out. I was like, you know what? I have one beer left in the fridge. And when I say beer, I mean a White Claw, because I really don't like beer anymore. You can make fun of me if you want. I don't give a shit. I have no shame. So I walked to the grocery store because I didn't want to drive, I just didn't want to drive in a storm because I don't trust other drivers. And so I just walked, let out the good old Washingtonian in me, and went and bought a case of drink. And then I was soaked, okay? I was just soaked through and through. And then I was walking back, and nobody was out and about, you know? And then when I got back to my complex, I was like walking from the far end. I was walking back, and I was just soaked. I was holding this case of booze under my arm. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get busted for a public intoxication right now. So I just pulled out a beer, and I just started drinking it while I was walking through. Like, it must have been quite the sight, because then I started realizing there was a couple people on their balconies just watching the storm, and then they just see this fucking idiot just stomping through the storm with a case of beer under his arm, drinking one. But that's okay, because like I said, I have zero shame, and I don't give a shit. Whenever I think back to my life, like I remember when I got my first apartment, I was so worried that like somebody would hear me like making music or something like that, or I'm in public filming a video, I'd be worried somebody would say. Now it's like I just don't care. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit. I have no shame. Like if somebody's hearing me record this awful podcast right now, I don't care. I'm not going to live in this area for the rest of my life anyways. So I'm going to forget about anything. Everybody keeps it moving, and that just is what it is. But so anyways, I was drinking throughout that day. And I think when I come off of like a bender, I think it's just alcohol withdrawal, honestly. I think with the body, like when you get used to being boozed up for like a couple hours, I think that's like a big part of a hangover. At least for me, like when I'm hungover, my anxiety just goes through the freaking roof. Then I have a very, very, very bad habit of relapsing and ripping heaters when I drink. And I think coming off cigarettes is the same thing. So I think whatever garbage you put in your body just really shows how you pay for something in one way or the other. And I think back to my life, like, and I don't really fault my parents because they're boomers. They didn't have the resources and they didn't know about everything. But I think back, it's like all the soda I was drinking and just all the like processed food I was eating. It's like, there's no wonder I've had these health issues later on. Like as soon as I turned 30, I just started having like autoimmune issues. And I didn't know anything about like stress management and diet and all these things. And obviously I was like in a fucked up relationship. I was in a fucked up living situation, like a couple in a row. And, like that, it's just like after it's like you just got to take care of yourself. And so it's like now when I see like little kids drinking soda pop and eating corn dogs and shit all the time, now I'm just like, oh man, it's not my place to do anything. You know what I mean? It's not my place to tell parents like, hey, your fucking kid shouldn't be inhaling this poison, because I've never had little nuggets running around, so I don't know how hard it is to entertain them. Or I think it's real easy. It's real easy for us non-parents to be like, oh, look at that parent just shoving an iPad in that kid's hands. And at the same time, you ask these people without kids, they're like, oh, I don't want the stress of having a kids. And they're usually like the most judgmental ones of parents. So unless a parent is like being absolutely oblivious and letting their kid go around and like rub feces on the airplane wall or something like that, I try not to judge parents. But also at the same time, like the world doesn't revolve around your kid. Like I saw a video the other day of this old white lady came up to like this black dude and her daughter, and she was just blaring an iPad at the airport. And this old white lady came over. She's like, "Excuse me, sir, do you guys mind turning that iPad down? It really hurts my ears." And it does. Like when somebody's playing music off of a phone speaker or something like that, it literally like pierces my ear. Like it sounds like shit to me. I don't know how people deal with it. And the guy's like, "Oh, well, do you have sensory issues? Because she does. She's autistic and she can't wear headphones." And he's trying to like shame her, He's like shaming her. And then I think that's just so much the culture is like all this. We went too crazy with the Karen shaming, all right? We went too crazy with the Karen shit because those old bitchy white ladies, like, yeah, we went too far with the Karen sharing because we went too far with the Karen shaming because all those cranky old white ladies were like the balance in the universe, okay? They kept everything in line because, it's not like anybody was ever scared of them, but it's like now everybody's just out of control and wilding, I'd rather have a couple old cranky people overreacting about stuff than motherfuckers just run around twerking on cars and shit like that. But there's a balance, There's a balance. But yeah, I just try to. It's weird. It's gotten to the point like it's kind of depressing, but it's like I don't even like going anywhere and doing anything because I'm either worried about getting shot or I'm worried about being around just some degeneracy around some people just yelling and trying to capture a world star moment that I don't want to see. I don't want to travel because I don't want to deal with just the rudeness and crankiness of people. Like I just don't even want to be around people. Like I'm just completely checked out of humanity. Or I'm scared of the freaking airplane falling apart. That's another one. And so, yeah, it's like anytime, like I feel ripped off anywhere I go now. I just feel like, okay, somebody's just trying to squeeze their last penny out of me, and somebody else is going to be cranky and let it out on those of us surrounding them. And so I've just kind of lost my spark to be in the midst of humanity. I'm just kind of done. And that sounds like alarming and depressing and whatnot, but that's not how I mean it. I would never do self-harm. I would rather just like I completely disagree with Kurt Cobain, or I know he quoted like, who did he quote? I don't remember who it was like Frank Zappa or something like that, where he said it's better to burn out than fade away. I 1000% disagree because I think it's better to just fade away. Why not? Have you ever seen that movie where Nicolas Cage goes to Las Vegas and he plans on just drinking himself to death? That's how I think I'm going to go out one of these days. I'm just going to say, screw it. I'm just going to start putting everything on a credit card. And I'm just, instead of like doing something like depressing and, going off in the woods and, I got to be careful what I say on YouTube. I would just, like go and have the most fun ever. And then at that point, if you go and do that, then you probably realize, life is actually pretty good. And you just keep it moving. But I just don't need, I don't need like the average parts of humanity to keep me clicking. It's like this weird. It's not even weird, dude. On that subject, I think what they really need to do is honestly they need to make the fentanyl stronger at this point. I like to watch these videos of these cop ride-alongs where I always thought it'd be exciting to be a police officer, and I'd probably be a cop right now if I didn't have health issues. And I know it sounds like a bitch-ass excuse. It just is I wouldn't get accepted. That's why if you guys want to go off and start some war, be my guest, because I'm not going to get drafted. They'll take you before they take me. So if you guys want to keep voting for the warmongering, knock yourselves out. I will be at home with your lonely wives. But yeah, they need to make the fentanyl stronger, dude. They just need to get the job over with. It sounds fucked up, dude. But so I went walking today. I went for like a little walk. I usually like my routine is try to be like go to the gym, get some exercise, and go outside and get some sun. And so I go like out in the woods and I go for this walk. And there's a gate that gives the woods access to this trail that goes back to this little lake behind my place. And so I don't know if it's like transients that pop in there, but there's just always just garbage. You know what I mean? Like people littering and garbage and whatnot. And you can just tell it's just traces of like druggies, you know? So it'd be like a underwear with, you know, somebody crapped their underwear, like just like drug, you know what I mean? You just know when it's just druggy shit. And today I was walking and I just see, I saw the gate was like somebody ran over the gate. So I went and propped up the gate by hand and it was all bent at the hinges and whatnot. And I look over and I see this box in the bushes with just all this like medical equipment laying around it and like syringes and like sample, you know, like test tube samples, like God knows what. And then it's just laying there in nature. So like somebody jacked a box. They probably tried to rob a pharmacy or something like that. And instead they got like a box of like test tubes of like specimen samples of like urine and jizz and God knows what in them. And then they just dumped it behind my house, you know? And it's like, I'm just so sick of these people, dude. I'm so like, I have zero compassion for these drug addicts. I don't care. I know it sounds like, oh, you know, good kid. He got put on some Percocets after a surgery and then he started self-medicating. I get it, dude. I get it. But there's a certain point where it's like, for you to be on the street smoking fentanyl or whatever, you've reached a point of like where you've betrayed so many people and all the programs are there. I mean, when you get arrested for a drug charge, the first thing the cops would be like, hey, get help. You know, they're like, but none of them, they want the help. They don't want the help. So they just keep stringing this out. And it's like, so now these people are stealing to fund their habits. It's like the only solution that I see at this point is like mandatory rehab for the users and life in prison for the dealers. And you get these just like soft, oh no, people, the drug dealers come from circumstances where they got to support themselves. And then the users, they have trauma. So what, dude? We all have problems, but now it's becoming all of our problem that we have to deal with the crime associated with all these drugs, you know? I just have no sympathy for it. Grow up. Like go and do something. They're like the politicians and like the judges and all these people just enabling it. It's like, I could not imagine being a cop. Imagine saying goodbye to your wife and kids every morning, knowing you're going to go out there and maybe get killed or stabbed or poked by some dirty needle, and just seeing the same guy over and over and over again doing the same shit, or like being a paramedic or something like that and just seeing the same people over and over and over again and having to jab them with Narcan. It's like, what? I don't know, dude. Maybe that's like the fucked up German in me, where I don't know. I was actually reading, so I got curious. I was wondering, because everything you ever see about the Germans in the 40s is always like, you know, Hitler related, you know, and I was just kind of wondering, like, I wonder what life was like for the actual German citizens at the time, you know, having grown up in Germany and kind of known, you know, the stereotype's always been like Germans don't have a sense of humor. And but from what I know, I mean, the funniest people I've ever met in my life were in Germany. It's not necessarily that they all like were Germans, but they spoke German. It's honestly like a real funny language and culture. There's a lot of ways to like manipulate words in German, and a lot of creative people. I mean, think about it, a lot of like, you know, art, math, and science and shit like that. It's, you know, Germans are creative people. So it's like when you get a funny sound and language with creative people, like you get some pretty funny shit out of it. So when people say like Germans aren't funny, I get where that comes from. I'm not like offended by it by any means, but so I was kind of wondering, like, well, you know, even though it goes against the stereotype, like these funny people, like, how is it these people with a sense of humor and that are smart, like, fell into this dictatorship type stuff, you know? And I wanted to know, like, none of the propaganda, like none of the government type stuff, like what it was like for the citizens, because you either only ever hear about like the Jewish perspective of being persecuted or like the government perspective of being this dictatorship. But you never just hear about like just the average German citizen minding their business, you know, like a normie back then. And so I was trying to see like, what humor they were into, like what the type of humor was. And I know it probably wouldn't resonate because even if I look at like US humor from the 40s, you know, it'd be like, oh, my arms are sore because I flew in today and I shot heroin or whatever. Um, that's not actually what they said about the heroin, but you know what I mean. And so I was wondering like what the Germans would laugh at. And a big thing and a big thing that they would do at the time is basically satire, and they would satire their enemies. You know, which is basically like when you see like all these propaganda things, like you know, like a giant snake with a Star of David on its head, like the. So I guess that's like more like when the political regime got into it, and actually the citizens, from what I understand, got really sick of it because the Aryan Germans, they got so powerful in Germany where they had no opposition in the media, so the whole satire thing became stale because there were no opposing voices. And when I saw that, I was like, you know, because my sense of humor has always kind of been like kind of ridiculing people that I don't agree with. And I realized like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. Like but then it's so funny because they would talk about how the Nazis, like they didn't allow any humor about the party themselves because I want to word this correctly because it's like a thought, because you always think like, okay, obviously whoever's doing the silencing is doing the oppression, but it was like a level deeper to how I read this person's thesis from, it was like this 50-page paper about humor in Nazi Germany. And they really explained how basically the Nazis would look at humor as like a basically just a way to like ridicule and discredit. You know what I mean? And so that's why they wouldn't allow it against the regime. Like you couldn't make fun of like socially. It's basically what I'm trying to say. It's basically the same thing as like all the wokeness shit now. You know what I mean? How like you're not allowed to make jokes about. I'm not saying it right. It sounds too obvious. There was a layer deeper that I'm not smart enough. There's just a lot of parallels between the two things. But basically, a lot of the just German citizens themselves, they got real sick of the like Nazi party propaganda, not even propaganda, humor of just constantly like trashing immigrants and Jews and stuff like that because there was no opposition. And so that made me like really thankful that in this country, that for the most part, you know, even though the social media sites and stuff like that, even though they do have like a heavy left-leaning bias, and that's kind of really where the comparison was drawn, where the government would influence what the media, you know, what is appropriate and what's not. You know, that's kind of like how now the government's really trying to tell social media companies what's advertiser friendly, deemable, and things like that. And so, but for the most part, you know, compared to like a Nazi Germany, like we are pretty balanced in the opinions and being able to like make fun of each other. And it just made me really appreciative that we do have that much of a structure left where there is just like, and I hope it doesn't get worse. I hope it stays, because even if I don't completely agree with somebody, you know, I mean, they're still allowed to say and feel and do whatever they want as long as it doesn't like hurt somebody. You know what I mean? And it's almost like we wouldn't have, without any like diversity and shit like that, we wouldn't have any humor because nothing would be unexpected. Because something's funny when something unexpected happens, right? I mean, you probably rarely laugh at somebody just being a huge like goofy cornball. I know I don't. But like when something unexpected happens, it's that's what's funny. And so if we're too wrapped up in our norms, if we become too like insulated, and that's why I think it's funny. Like this sounds kind of weird, but I think just like a little sprinkle, maybe like racism isn't the right word. I just think it's more of like a sense of humor. But I think just like, yeah, I guess just like a little sprinkle of like a judgment towards each other is good, because then at least you can laugh about it and bring it to the forefront, because everybody has their biases and things they don't, nobody doesn't absolutely not see other cultures, no matter who you are. Like if something's foreign to you, it's going to seem kind of funny and strange, right? And so if you have to constantly like tiptoe and feel like you got to walk on glass around those things, it's going to cause like actual resentment, in my opinion, to where it's like, for the most part, like if somebody, wasn't allowed to make jokes about like me being skinny, like if they just weren't allowed, eventually they'd find like, well, fuck these skinny motherfuckers. You know what I mean? It just breeds resentment if you try to silence people, but then also you need to be just like respectful and keep in mind that people are different than you, but it's okay to like poke fun at each other in a healthy way. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a good middle ground there that, kind of gets tugged on, that I think would be helpful. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, where are we at? About 20 minutes. Do we want to keep going? I don't think we want to keep going, dude. I think that'll do for now. I think that'll do now for now, folks. Maybe we'll start making this thing longer when we actually start building a little bit more steam. So please tell somebody about the pod. Please send it to somebody. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share. And I will see y'all next week. Check out the other stuff. I have another show that's strictly on YouTube called Rodney Watches Fake News. So go check that out if you're too lazy to stay up on top of, I watch like the White House briefings and just keep the important parts in there and make fun of them. So we got that. And yeah, go check that out. So, all right. Love y'all a long time. Deuces. Psst, psst.